Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 10 of the Age Group Triathlon podcast. This week we are discussing bike maintenance, but I wanted to take a moment to stop and acknowledge that I'm very happy to have made it to episode 10 with a large amount of feedback, over 1,000 listens across the previous 9 episodes. Very thankful for you all coming on for the journey with me. As a thank you, I've put together a little free gift for you. It's an ebook which talks you all through bike setup for race day for triathlons. So we're talking about aero bars, choice of bike, choice of wheels, tyre pressures, carrying water, all of these considerations. So if you're interested in that, head to the link in the show notes where you can download that. You get subscribed to my mailing list where you get free training tips and updates on this podcast, and you'll be able to download your free ebook immediately. On the podcast today, I have an old friend and training partner of mine, Lee Williams, who is a bike mechanic, recently started his own workshop, and we have a discussion over all things relating to bike maintenance. We cover waxing chains versus lubricating chains, we cover counterfeit parts, bearings, how to look after your bike in winter, preventing punctures, servicing. I think we do a pretty good job of touching on most of the main subjects relating to bike maintenance. So sit back, I hope you really enjoy it and learn a lot. Hello, Lee Williams. Welcome to the Age Group Triathlon podcast. Now, Lee is an old friend of mine. I've known for sort of going on sort of 10 years now. We're both a member of the same triathlon club. Both did a short stint of the head of triathlon. It was primarily a running club. And Lee now has started a new business. So if you could give us a little bit of a heads up about that and what it is that you do.
Yeah, so my background was originally an engineer, and then I moved into IT, run various companies of my own or with partners. I sold out of my company a few years ago and was wondering what to do next. Now, in my spare time, I'd always fixed bicycles, and I had also done lots of motorcycle racing as well, and I ended up being a spanner person for various races over the years. So I combined my love of cycling and my love of all things mechanical, and decided to open up my own workshop, which has been going really well. So we cater mostly to triathletes and high-end cyclists around Southwest London.
Yes, that's great. You know, there's always a market for bike mechanics, always has been. But I think there's a real market for bike mechanics around triathletes because a lot of them they just don't know much about their bike. You have a lot of people who will go into a shop like Sigma or Pearson's within Southwest London area. And they go, "Oh, I want to do a triathlon," and they walk away with a bike that could cost sort of up to 15 grand. Which is an eye-watering amount to spend on a bike, if you ask me. But each to their own. Um, but then they don't know how to fix it. They don't understand how it works. It feels like they're riding on a ticking time bomb. That if something were to break on it, they don't know how to fix that. And that yes, bike mechanics are brilliant in many ways. They are there to help you fix your bike when you don't understand how to fix it. Also there for service and for a professional to have a look over it. However, there are certain jobs that you can do yourself to not only understand your bike better, so when it comes to doing sort of small jobs like indexing gears, jobs that should really only realistically take a few minutes and can save you sort of 40 quid each time from going and getting done professionally. But also learning about roadside maintenance, so whether it's how to change a flat tire, whether that is, even something as simple as how to fix a drop chain. You may laugh if we just pick it up and put it back on the cassette, the chain set, but a lot of people don't understand this. But personally, I think the job that sort of the most important thing that a triathlete can do to maintain the long-term health of their bike is to ensure that they're keeping it lubed up. So if you can tell us a little bit more about, bicycle lubricant and why it's so important for triathletes to keep their bikes working with a good quality lubricant.
Okay. I'm going to circle back to what I believe that most triathletes should be considering. In fact, all triathletes should be really thinking about is you will need to hand your bike over to a mechanic at some point.
Mm.
And the key is when you hand it over to the mechanic, the bike's in really good order, and the mechanic only needs to do the stuff that requires specialist tools or specialist parts. So my mantra is always prevention better than cure. And every post ride should end in a preventative maintenance session. And I don't think there's too much to it. I think it's pretty simple. So the first thing is I like to say to my customers, never put away a dirty bike. So you've been
Mm.
out in foul weather, give the bike a clean when you get back, no matter. Maybe yesterday it was very icy in London, and it wouldn't have been a good idea to wash the bike down yesterday, but
Mm.
certainly today would be a good day. So I, I always say to customers, use a good quality bicycle cleaning product. Don't use soapy water. Don't use fairy liquid. It's too aggressive. It bites into the aluminium. It bites into the steel and causes you problems long term. I had quite a few bikes come through where they've used really aggressive cleaning materials and it's just corroded the aluminium. You end up changing really expensive parts. It's almost better not to clean the bike at all
Mm.
than clean it with aggressive cleaning materials. So there are a lot of products out there. I happen to use Muck Off, but I think there are other equally good products on there. And all you do is you spray the bike with water or sponge it with water, spray a bit of Muck Off on, and then spray or sponge it again. That's all you need to do post ride. There is no real need to go into degreasing and all that kind of stuff, as long as you're using a decent quality chain lube.
Hmm.
So the next thing I'm going to come on to is chain lube.
Mm.
So I strongly recommend people just give their chain a wipe with either a kitchen rag or cloth or some kind. An old sports sock I find is perfect. Just spin the chain backwards with a cloth around it, and it just gets all the crap off of it.
Mm.
All of the stuff that collects when you're out riding. Dirt, etc., 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 and also dries it off. So the next question, and the big one, is what kind of lube should we be using?
Indeed.
Indeed. So there are two main lubes you'll hear about. One is an oil-based lube, and one is wax. There's one in the middle, however, and I'm going to recommend that one. But let's just go on to the whys and wherefores of waxing
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
oil. Okay. Now, oil's good. It seeps in. It seeps in between the rollers. It coats the outside of the chain. It prevents rust, all that kind of stuff. The problem with oil is it attracts dirt,
Mm.
and the more oil you have on, the more dirt you attract. So you end up putting more and more and more oil on, and getting more and more dirt attached to it, and then you get filth everywhere, and it's a disgusting thing you don't want to go anywhere near.
Mm.
And it actually ends up wearing your chain out more because crap gets in there more and more. So unless you're using a very fine, high quality oil and being really fastidious and cleaning it off and then reapplying it each time, I personally don't recommend oil. So the next one is waxing. So traditional waxings, you take the chain off, you degrease it, you then heat up a pot of wax, you put your chain in, and then you hang it up, let the excess drip off, and then your chain is normally good for like 1,000 kilometers or more. And it provides complete protection. It reduces the loss due to friction. So it makes you faster. Problem is, you need a degreasing unit. B, you need a waxing unit, and you need to spend quite a lot of money on wax. And you've got to have pliers to remove the chain and reattach it as well. So not many people that are, other than real enthusiasts, do chain waxing.
It's a bit of a
So
faff.
yeah, it's a bit of a faff. It works, but it's a bit of a faff.
I
And there
think
are
actually you
reasons
can
why.
buy pre-wax chains now, can't you?
You can, yeah. KMC do a really
Mm.
good range of pre-wax change, and they're good for a, they're good for 1,000 or more kilometers.
Mm.
But one other thing about waxing is that dirt doesn't stick to the wax; it just falls off until the wax starts to wear, and then the dirt does stick, and then it flings off, but it takes the wax with it. So the
Mm.
chain becomes self-cleaning. So that's one of the real key factors. And all you need to do is just give it a quick clean every 1,000 kilometers and then re-wax it again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they say there are waxes and there are waxes. To be honest with you, I've played with lots of them, and they all seem to be pretty good. And I suppose there are certain secret ingredients in certain premium brands, but any wax is better than no wax at all. So what's the middle way, I hear you ask? Well, the middle way is what we call an emulsion wax. An emulsion wax is wax particles suspended in a liquid like water. And what you do is you clean, you degrease your chain. And degreasing doesn't need to be expensive. You can use something as simple as petrol on a rag to just clean your chain off, and that'll get all the crap off. It'll still leave some in between the rollers. A professional bike garage will use a proper degreasing tool and probably an ultrasonic cleaner as well to get everything out. But if you've got, for example, a brand new chain, it'll have a standard lubricant on it. You clean it off with petrol, and then you wax your chain, and you're good to go. And what you do with this emulsion wax is you just drip a tiny amount on the outside of your chain, spinning the chain backwards, and you have your chain cross chain. So you have it on the biggest front cog and the biggest rear cog, and spin backwards, and that separates the links and allows capillary action to draw
Yeah.
the wax in.
Yeah. Never thought that.
Okay, that draws it all in. You wipe off the excess. The key with any kind of lube, whether you're using chain wax or whether you're using oil, is less is more. So the smallest amount you use more frequently, the better. But I use a product called Squirt that comes in two flavors. It's
Mm.
winter formula and summer formula, and the main difference is just the viscosity of it. That's the sort of runniness of it. The winter one is more runny than the summer one.
Yep.
Not expensive, I think £15 and for one pot, and it will last you 2, maybe 3 years.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, go on.
So that's it. I just tell customers I give it away as a service. People come in, I wax their chains, I give them a bottle of Squirt and just say, pop this on every couple of rides, and your chain will last 2, 3 times longer than it would do otherwise.
Yeah, that sounds good. Obviously, yeah, emulsion wax is sort of a very good choice. But if somebody were to go, oh, I need to get some new lube for my bike, and they go down to sort of the local bike shop or maybe a local hardware store that does a bit of bike stuff, and the only options they've got are oil-based lubricant, and you've got dry lube or wet lube. Which which decision should they be making there?
No, this is a really good one. And people get confused by this. And I knew someone in the middle of an Ironman who believed dry lube was only for dry weather. And he'd put dry lube on his bike, and we were in Mallorca. And he stopped halfway through the race because it started raining, and he re-lubricated his chain with wet lube. So that gave him like a 15-minute penalty while he was cleaning the old stuff off and putting new lube on. So any lube is better than no lube.
Yeah.
That's the short answer. And don't be like my friends. Don't spend 15 minutes mucking around with different kinds of lubes halfway through a race. If you have one kind of lube on and you're in a race, just carry on. It honestly doesn't matter. I personally prefer a dry lube. Dry lube put on sparingly but frequently, I think, is the best bet. If you're disciplined, then wet lube is more satisfying because you can actually see the oil glistening away. But to make wet lube work, wet lube is basically just oil. So you need to clean all the old stuff off, put the stuff on a clean chain, and then clean the excess off again. And you will get those tattoos on your calf muscle from the
Hmm.
chain ring. But I don't I don't believe in the UK you can sort of say, well, I'll put dry lube on because the weather's going to be dry. I mean, unless you're in Spain or Lanzarote or somewhere, you can't guarantee the weather.
No.
So just I would steer clear of those products, to be perfectly frank with you, because they're just designed to make you buy more of them.
Interesting.
A good
Um,
all-round lube is better.
Sorry?
A good all-round lube is
Oh,
better.
all round lube. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I've always gone for wet lube
Mhm.
because I know I've tried dabbled with a bit of dry lube, and it just didn't last. And like you say, it's one of those little and often things. Whereas, wet lube can be a bit more fit and forget until it starts attracting so much dirt and salt and that off of the road that it starts eating away at the drivetrain. So yeah, good shout there. Speaking of collecting all of this lovely stuff off of the road, we're currently recording this in January. Are there different considerations that need to be made when it comes to bike maintenance, routines, cleaning, all of that in winter relative to a pleasant summer's day?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So one thing I bang on about the whole time is the tyres and the post-ride maintenance, not the choice of tyres. To be perfectly frank with you, pretty much all tyres are good. So your biggest consideration is whether you go with tubeless TPU tubes or traditional inner tubes. Once you've made that decision, almost any of the tyres from the reputable brands are good. The key difference, in my view, is after a ride, let your tyres down a little bit and check the treads for bits of flint. Depending on where you live, I ride mostly in Surrey, and you get flint and bits of glass washing across the road after bad weather, and they pick up in your tyre.
Hmm.
Now, I'm not going to be too nerdy here, but tyre's got lots of different compounds in it. The most important compound for wet grip is a thing called silica, and it basically lets you stick to the road. Now, more silica means more grip in the wet, but it also means more punctures because it picks up little bits of flint, and those little bits of
Hmm.
flint uh, work their way in and give you a puncture in the middle of in the middle of a race. You don't want that.
No.
Don't be that person. So the thing to do is just let your tyres down a little bit. You pinch the tyre, particularly the back tyre for some reason. It's always the back tyre. Pinch the tyre and just flick out with your thumbnail or a point of a small screwdriver or something.
Yeah.
Just flick out bits of flint and bits of glass, and honestly, your tyres will last 100 times more, 100 times longer without puncturing if you just be really disciplined every ride. Give your bike a clean, lube your chain properly,
Hmm.
and then check for the flint. In fact, check for flint more frequently than you lube the chain if you're using emulsion wax, like I suggest. Um, the other thing to note about winter riding, of course, is the salt on the road. It's highly aggressive. It'll chew into all of your springy bits and boingy bits, all the bits and pieces that move back and forth and make the bike work. So I just circle back to what I said earlier.
Hmm.
Use a good quality non-aggressive bike cleaner. Just rinse the bike and then stick some cleaner on it and then rinse it again. All you need to do. You don't need to do anything else. And just get that salt off the bike. Um, if you, for example, use like fairy liquid to clean your bike, that's essentially the same as the salt on the road. It's really aggressive, and you actually make it much worse by using something like fairy liquid or any normal detergent. Don't use that. It's just bad. You need to get that salt off. The best way of doing that is with water.
Hmm. And where do you stand on some more sort of winter tires, such as the Continental Four Seasons, the Specialized Roubaix, these tires that are designed to, they've got that thicker puncture protection.
Mhm.
And they also, I mean, they talk about sort of having a compound which is better for the wet, which is probably just an increased silica content. Um, but do you think it's worth switching tires for winter, taking your GP 5000s off and sticking the Four Seasons on, or swapping the turbo for the Roubaix? Or do you think that if you keep on top of, picking the flint out of the tires and that the general maintenance principles, do you think somebody can get away with sort of the same tire year round?
Yeah, only sure you can get away with the same tire all year round as long as you maintain properly. However, that said, there are lots of considerations. So again, I'm not going to get too nerdy. Tires are my specialist subject. Um, but we mentioned this silica earlier. So the silica content in a tire is key to the amount of grip you get and the amount of feedback you get on a wet road. But also, it means you get more punctures because more flint is attracted if you don't get rid of it. So the Continental GP 4000, a really good example of a fantastic winter tyre. They're pliant, and when I say pliant, it means they don't have big, thick linings inside them to prevent punctures. Schwalbe do some really good puncture-resistant tyres, but they have really big, thick linings inside them, and you get no feedback, so you don't know, how much grip you've actually got. And I do see people when I go out on group rides crashing because they just don't have the feedback they get from like a thick Schwalbe, like a Duono. But you just need to be very cautious on those tyres, and you will get much less punctures. If you go with something like a Continental GP 5000S, now they've got absolutely the fastest tyre you can buy. They are fantastic in terms of the amount of feedback, but they're very thin. They're a race day tyre.
Yeah.
They're there for your races and for your summer rides with your mates, training rides. They're not for all round winter riding. Having said that, that's what I'm riding on. But I like to play around with lots of different tyres. There's a tyre out there called the Gator Skin, also by Continental, popularly noted called the Skater Skin, because again, you get no feedback. Now, what they've done is they've got a lining inside the Gator Skin, but also they have much, much less silica inside them, so they don't pick up the flint quite the same way.
Hmm.
So you don't get the grip, you don't get the feedback, and also you've got a thick lining. So great for commuting. If your bike's upright and you're going back and forth, fantastic. But if you're doing a spirited weekend ride with your mates or doing a race, I'd steer clear of them.
Yeah, I mean
Uh,
the skater skins, I think also that name comes from sort of lack of grip in the wet as well.
yeah, that's the silica, lack of silica.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
uh,
compromise. It's all a
it is.
compromise.
But they a lot of people would choose them because they're scared of getting a puncture.
Hmm.
Because in their mind, if they get a puncture, they have no idea what they'll do.
Yeah.
They get a puncture, they take it to a bike shop. And so they go for a set of gator skins because they go, I know if I run these, I'm really probably not going to get a puncture. And yeah, that is very, I mean, that's not a terrible bet. But if you crash your bike, obviously that's a downside. And if you are somebody who's training hard and wants to do themselves justice on the bike leg, they're not the fastest tire, the gator skins, are they?
They're not fast. No, they're not slow either. I think that they will slow you down. However, when I say slow, as in they're not slow as in rolling resistance. The result rolling resistance isn't too bad. If you're in a straight line, then you'll be hard pressed to tell the difference between a gator skin and, for example, a Four Seasons.
Mm.
Um, However, when you come to the corners, particularly downhill, you'll be in a completely different postcode because the person with the Four Seasons will know what's going on underneath their tire. They'll know how much grip they have and how hard they can push it. Whereas the guy on a gator skins will be hanging right back. Now, I always like to, and I know this is about bike maintenance, not about strategy for triathlon, but
No, no, go for it.
if you improve your FTP or whatever by, say, for example, 5-10%, your speed, your outright speed going up hills and on the flat isn't going to increase a huge amount. Your average pace is not going to change massively. It's going to change by a few kilometers an hour at most. However, if you've got more grip and more confidence going downhill and going into corners, a 10% increase in your confidence will translate into a much faster time.
Yeah.
So I personally believe the most important decision you can make is knowing your tyres and understanding about your tyres. That said, being able to fix a puncture as well efficiently and quickly, it will also save many races.
Yeah, you get a lot of people are almost afraid of their bike. They're afraid it's going to break on them. Um,
Mhm.
the idea of, they'll have their big Iron Man that they're going out to do in Mallorca. Well, 70.3 if it's Mallorca now, but and they'll hire a mechanic to break the bike down and put it in the bike box, and then when they get to the other end, they'll have a mechanic rebuild it for them. Now, when I got my first bike, I mean, back in the day, you could get a half decent road bike for 500 quid. Got my 500 quid Specialized, um, and I didn't have any money at the time, and so I learned all the bike maintenance myself. So I figured I can't keep taking it to the mechanic every time there's a bit of a fix. Instead, I'm going to get on YouTube. I'm going to get myself a set of Allen keys. I'm going to get myself a torque wrench. Um, and some of the basic tools, sort of chain splitter. I got sort of a basic tool set. If somebody wants to learn more about their bike, if somebody wants to become more confident when it comes to understanding their bike and fixing it, where's a good place to start for those small jobs that don't require sort of specialist tools or several hours?
I mean, I think you've hit the nail on the head, really. YouTube is a good place to start.
Mm.
And many local bike shops, like my one, for example, we hold regular bike maintenance sessions, and they're normally aimed at the sort of basic stuff, like, for example, taking a bike to pieces, put it in a box, and reassembling it.
Yep.
How to fix a puncture, what to note when choosing tyres, all of that kind of stuff. So quite a lot of bike workshops will do that. I think it's probably worth, spending an hour or two with a mechanic, paying for his time or her time, and getting those questions answered as well. And they're often quite. I tell you now, there are so many products out there that no mechanic in the world knows everything about every bike.
Yeah.
So loads of us get stuck on jobs halfway through. Some bizarre thing comes in, some Italian piece of exotica comes in, you've got no idea how to fix it. So we all spend a great deal of our time on YouTube,
Mm.
researching how to do things from people who've already done it. And we'll all have our favorite channels we go to. So just spending an hour with a mechanic and asking him where he goes to for information is worth doing. There's quite a lot of good podcasts out there. By the same token, there are quite a lot of bad podcasts out there as well. So it's always worth checking. I've seen some pretty horrific facts and bodges where people have started watching some muppet who doesn't know what they're talking about on YouTube, quickly run out of talent, and then come in with a broken bike. And you're like, oh God, this is going to be a 3 hour job now. And if you
Yeah.
just left, it would have been a half-hour job. Um, I think the biggest problem is that when you get into the weeds with bike maintenance, you need lots and lots of specialist tools for
Mm.
like full servicing. But for the basic stuff, like you say, you need a chain splitter, some Allen keys, torque screws, and a lot of stuff can be done just with a set of Allen keys and a chain splitter.
Yeah, it's when you talk about, people sort of running out of talent when it comes to understanding, fixing their own bikes. When do you feel the alarm bell should start going off for someone as an athlete when they start to realize, hang on a minute, I think I've started doing more harm than good? If a job takes you over 90 minutes, then you've probably got yourself into a bit of a mess and it's time to call up the bike mechanic, what are the kind of the warning signs where people should sort of think, I think it's time to call this one and get an expert?
That's a really difficult question to answer because there are so many different types of people out there. But the one
Mm.
I keep on getting caught by is people have read about some amazing new brake that's on the market and they buy it and they watch the YouTube influencers saying, yeah, you've got to put this product in, it's going to improve whatever it happens to be. I had a guy the other day and he decided to upgrade 10 to 12 speed, and you watched a video on it on how to do it. And he bought this stuff, and it was inexpensive Chinese stuff he'd bought on the internet.
Mm.
But there was no instruction manuals. There was, it was, and he got himself. The bike was a real complete mess. It took me a couple of hours to get the bike back to how it was before he touched it,
Right.
and then another couple of hours to then fix the group set he'd bought. So he ended up spending 4 hours. I ended up spending 4 hours on this bike. If he just bought it and said, I want this," I would have just fitted the whole thing in probably less than 2 hours. But having said that, if he'd come in and asked advice, I told him wouldn't have touched this product with a barge pole, because particularly things you buy on the internet, the average mechanic is not trained. They're not trained on it, and you don't learn about this stuff. There's some manufacturer comes out of a great idea, and they do a sort of a TikTok channel on it's going to change your life, blah blah blah
Mm.
blah. And you know, if you just stick to the recognized brands, then you're half. If you stick to the recognized brands and you have a problem, for example, on a race doing Ironman Lanzarote, and you're on a Shimano equipped bike, there'll be someone there that knows how to fix it. But if you're on a Microshift or some other exotic brand equipped bike, nobody's going to know what to do to help you.
Mm.
So I tend to stick with the herd myself. Just
Yeah.
circling back to what you asked, when should people know that they're in trouble? As I say,
Mm.
there are a lot. If you're having to go to the internet and keep on buying tools to fix a problem, then definitely you're in trouble, and you should be considering: am I equipped to do this job? If you've
Mm.
had to buy like a couple of tools to do a job, so you've never seen the tool before, you um, you've never been trained how to use the tool. And when I say trained, I don't think people should necessarily get trained for everything they do, but you should have a fairly good idea how to hold a wrench and a screwdriver. And for example, removing bottom brackets, we all get caught by this. There's probably 100 different bottom bracket standards and probably 200 different bottom bracket tools. And if you ask 5 mechanics the best way of doing a bottom bracket, you'll get 12 different opinions. So steer clear of bottom brackets. Headsets are surprisingly easy to do.
Mm.
But the problem is that there are 1,000 different headsets out there, and unless you know which particular headset to use, these are two little bearings that go in your steerer tube that hold your front forks in place. If you've got a recognised bike like a Specialized or whatever it happens to be, and you know the year, you can then go onto the internet or onto the manufacturer's website. You can buy the correct bearings. Then you only need 2 different Allen keys, and you can put those bearings in. Dead simple, really, really simple. Unless you've got internally routed cables, which go through the steerer tube, and then forget it. Don't go anywhere near that. That's definitely a professional job.
Yeah. Just touching on bearings there. Imagine a lot, well, some people out there, some listeners might not really understand what bearings are, what they look like, what the role that they play in the bike is. But they are the cause of, some problems with the running of the bike mechanically, but also the efficiency of how it is that you sort of apply force to the road. So, if you can just give us a very quick introduction to bearings and where we might want to make some considerations when it comes to sort of bike maintenance.
Really a good question. So yeah, there are lots of bearings in a modern bicycle. Typically 15 different sets of bearings. So that's a hell of a lot. Um, so what is a bearing? So a bearing is a way of making two surfaces move against each other with the minimum amount of friction. The typical way of doing that is what we call a sealed bearing today on bicycles. They used to be open bearings, they're now sealed. And what you have is an outer, basically, ring of metal with a groove in it. And then you have an inner groove of metal, again, with a ring in it. And between those 2 rings of metal, sitting in those grooves are little balls, and depending on the bearing, it could be anywhere from 30 to 9 little balls. They're called ball bearings, and they sit in these sealed units. Um, inside, those balls will usually have oil seals on the outside of them, sealing between the two of them, and they'll be packed with some kind of lubricant, often a grease. Um, Now, all ball bearings aren't made the same, and there are lots of different brands and there are lots of different kinds. And to further muddy the water, there are lots of counterfeit bearings out there. I can't tell you the number of times people have come into me with, a broken wheel, and they go, "I've bought some new bearings." And they bought a good quality brand like NTN, SKF, FAG. All of these bearings are good quality Japanese or German, high quality ground bearings, and they look fantastic. But inside the box is a fake bearing, and I can tell straight away that it's a fake bearing. But the average person who's doing something won't. So I just buy good quality bearings. Um, and I just stick them straight in. I charge a premium for that because I know that they're good quality bearings. But if people bring in cheap bearings to me, then I'll fit them if you really want me to. But you'll be back in again in a couple of weeks' time, probably. So I don't want to get into the weeds about bearings, but stick to good quality manufacturers. The next thing is you'll see ceramic talked about over and over and over and over and over again. Um, I have to say, I wouldn't spend the extra money unless I was absolutely at the pinnacle of my game. You can, I a bottom bracket, two bottom bracket bearings. I can spend £40 per bearing on ceramic bearings because people want them, and I'm spending £40, so I'm charging extra to fit them. Um, you can get an equally good stainless steel bearing for less than half that price, and it will make no difference whatsoever to your performance, and it will probably last a lot longer. You can get a good quality steel bearing with a good seal on it that will last for perhaps 5, 10 years for £5. But the difference in performance between £5 and £40 for an age group triathlete is negligible. That said, if you've got an integrated headset and you've got the cables and things running through the middle of the bearings, then it's worth spending every single penny that you possibly can on the best quality bearings, particularly if you can get stainless steel bearings, because you don't want to be doing that job too often. And even if you have to cut that job down once every couple of years, then that's a good thing.
Mm.
But in terms of like ceramic bearings for your wheels, all that kind of stuff, in stock I carry ordinary consumer set of bearings and ceramic bearings. I put ceramic bearings in when people ask for them, but I don't think for the life of me makes much difference.
Mm. There's a point now that's come up twice, which is people buying sort of low quality components, either intentionally or otherwise. So I think, what you're saying about people getting, these off-brand group sets from China. Obviously, if somebody were to go, I want a top-end group set, and they look at SRAM Red or Shimano Dura Ace Di2, their jaw's going to hit the floor, and then they're going to go, how much? And then they see some influencer on TikTok who is telling them how this £500 group set is just as good as Di2, and they buy it and they get themselves into trouble. And the other problem that you seem to have is, like you say, people who buying these counterfeit bearings probably getting them from eBay, maybe some Amazon sellers, or just some other marketplace on the internet. And I get it. Cycling is not a cheap sport. But the way that the trap I think some people fall into is they get themselves, they say, right, I'm gonna get into triathlon, I'm gonna get myself a bike. And they say, right, I've got a 5 grand budget for a bike. They go into the bike shop and they have a look around. That one looks quite good. And at the end of it, they end up wheeling out a bike that costs 7 grand. And they go, right, I need pedals. Oh, that costs more. Oh, I need to get myself a decent helmet. Oh, that costs more. And they've blown their entire budget for the bike on the frame itself in the belief that saving the extra 200 grams is going to be an absolute game changer there to their performance. And they end up having to cut corners in other areas of sort of bike apparel, safety, components, accessories, stuff like that. But I would encourage people, look, if you can't afford to get a reputable brand from a reputable retailer, I'd say personally, you're better off saving your pennies, or if it's waiting until you can afford it, or if it's something that absolutely needs to be done, you're much better off putting, a high quality component on a credit card rather than getting some, unknown brand from China shipped over to you and strapping them onto the machine that you ride downhill at close to sort of 30, 40 miles an hour.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think what one thing that people should bear in mind, and I'm going to blow my own trumpet a little bit here, is that you might only have one bike at home. I mean, obviously, you should have several bikes at home because N plus
Obviously.
one and all that. Okay. But you might only have one bike at home, and you can spend a lot of time researching the best tires, the best this, the best that, and decide this is what I'm going to buy. And then, for example, you might say, I'm going to buy a Continental GP 5,000 and I want it tubeless and I want this and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if you go into a bike shop, that unless it's a discounter, if you go into a normal bike shop, that's going to cost you £69. Quite a lot of money for a tyre. And you need two of them. It's a hell of a lot of money for a tyre that probably won't last the whole season. Okay. It is the best tyre made today.
Yeah.
But you can spend an awful lot of time on the internet and you can find that very same tyre for £35
Hmm.
on the internet. So I get people wander into the workshop with their £35 Continental GP 5000 S's. Can you fit these, please? And they're fake.
Really?
So, yeah.
I've never come
So,
across fake tires before. That's really interesting.
so I've had fake tires, fake chains, fake brakes, fake group sets, all branded Shimano, Continental, etc., etc., etc. Now, as a mechanic, I've often got 5 or 6 bikes hanging up waiting for work, and I will look at the bike. I'll do a quick assessment with the customer and say, right, you need this, you need that. They might list a list of 4 or 5 parts. I've got most consumables in stock, but I then have to order the extras from the main suppliers. For example, I need a Shimano rear derailleur. Now, yourself, you'll have the time to sit there researching that, and you'll
Mm.
find maybe dusty stock of in a workshop in, I don't know, Cumbria or somewhere that hasn't shifted for a year, and you get a good price for it.
Yep.
But you have to be really careful because that might not be dusty stock. It might actually be fake stock. I'm not saying Cumbria is but anyway, anywhere more rural.
Yeah.
Um, I don't have the time to do that, so I just go straight to the Shimano supplier in the UK. I order it, and it arrives the next day.
Mm.
Okay, I fit it. I make a small profit on the sale of the item, and that's what that's how I make the money in order for me to fit it and set it up professionally
Yep.
for you. Um, but quite often I'll send quotes off, and I not just in my shop, but various other shops I've worked. You send a quote off to a client saying these are the parts it needs. For example, your chain is going to cost. You want an Ultegra chain. It's going to cost. It's 12 speed. It's going to cost you £45. Now you can find that online for significantly less than that.
Mm.
But is it real? Probably not. So I
Mm.
see a lot of fake chains. I see fake Shimano. I see fake SRAM. I even see fake KMC, and KMC are a brand that
Really?
exists to take business away um, from Shimano and SRAM.
Yeah.
KMC, by the way, are an excellent brand.
Mm.
They make chains, and they're significantly cheaper than either um, um, Shimano or SRAM, and they do a fantastic job. They really do. And
Mm.
if I've got a slightly older bike comes in, I almost always stick in KMC. They just last longer, and they change much crisper. But again, you can find fake ones out there, so be really, really careful. I've got it from Amazon. I've got it from eBay. eBay's the worst.
Oh yeah.
Um,
100%.
just be really, really careful. I don't have the time to shop around when I've got a bike in the workshop.
Yeah.
You know, customer drops the bike in, and they normally want it the next day. So I will assess it. I'll put the order in. The parts will arrive the next day, and I'll fit it that afternoon. I don't have the time to shop around. Okay, so I just need to get the bike back to the customer as quickly as I possibly can, so
Yeah.
they're out riding and training. That's the key thing.
Yeah.
Whereas, if you do get the quote through and think, oh, bloody hell, that's expensive. I know I can get a tyres cheaper than that. I know I can get a group set cheap. Whatever it happens to be really thoughtful about that, because you could end up making your bike worse.
Yeah. That is, I guess I wasn't aware quite how sort of how many fake components were out there. Clearly an awful lot more than I thought. Just one thought is that if somebody were to buy themselves a Mickey Mouse group set component, something like that, how much, I mean, does it become, are you sort of putting yourself at risk by buying something really cheap? And then you go and you have to sort of pay a mechanic to fit it anyway. It sounds like the kind of thing that, yeah, oh yeah, I can save 20, 30 quid there. By the time that you've bought it, paid the postage and packaging, and paid a mechanic to fit it, it really does seem like you're putting yourself at a lot of, potential harm and risk, or even financially, maybe because if a mechanic turns around and goes, that's fake, that's probably going to break on you, you've then got to spend more money to buy the genuine part again. So yeah, I can imagine how tempting it is, especially when somebody's newer to cycling, and they maybe don't understand just how expensive replacement parts can be. But circles back to, I guess, how is it that people can ensure that their components last for longer? And, assuming that we are replacing them because they're worn rather than because we've decided that 12 speed is going to take half an hour for our Ironman time. How is it that people can make sure they don't need to replace their cassettes, their chain rings, their chains quite as frequently?
Okay, so I'll use myself as an example. So I ride a fairly middle of the road felt, fo- no, no, sorry, Scott foil 10. I've had it since 2018. I do at least 5,000 kilometers on it a year. In all weathers. I do have a winter bike that I take when it's particularly crap.
Yep.
Um, but it's my race bike and my regular route riding road bike. I've replaced one chain, one set of jockey wheels, and about 10 sets of tyres. Everything else is original. I
Wow.
haven't replaced any bearings. I haven't replaced the group set. It's still got the same chain ring on there when I bought it. Well, I did change a bottom bracket, but only as an experiment, because I wanted to try out different bottom brackets for research. But it's got the same headset. It's got the same wheel bearings, because I just take it out and clean it, look after it. Just like I say, I just have this mantra, you know, look after your bike, and your bike will look after
Mm,
you. Just I wear tires out, but I change tires more frequently than I need to, because I'm a tire nerd. I like experimenting with new tires.
mm,
But I've been riding inner tubes, TPU tubes, and tubeless, and then circle back round again. But I
mm,
just look after the bike. The bike comes back in, it gets hosed down with water, it gets sprayed with muck off, it gets hosed down with water again. And then I just pop some squirt on the chain every couple of rides.
mm.
and wipe off the excess. I don't do anything else. I don't. I don't. I've never actually had the bike up on the rack being properly serviced because I just look after it.
That's great. Obviously, you have the knowledge and the skills to be able, to look after it like that. But I believe that's not out of the reach of many triathletes to just be really on it with the cleaning. Because yeah, if you clean your bike and you do just those basic, boring, routine service jobs, it should save you a huge amount on mechanics costs and from
Hmm.
just, and from new components. I mean, I often think if somebody was driving a car on the home from work and the check engine light came on their car, they would make an appointment with their mechanic the very next day.
Hmm.
If you have somebody riding a bike around that sounds like an absolute bag of nails, people can be quite happy to ride that for hundreds of miles before they think, oh, I don't know, maybe I should, maybe I should see that, or until the sort of the chain snaps, or until
Hmm.
the chain keeps jumping off the chain ring because the teeth are shot. They wait for disaster to happen rather than get it looked at, get it repaired, because they just don't sort of understand it. They don't take it quite as seriously.
So I was with a customer, a new to me customer the other day. Very, very nice lady. She's a business owner. She had no mechanical nous at all.
Yeah.
Just, but the bike was, it wasn't a new bike. It was a few years old, and she'd done lots of races on it. Very sort of demanding age group triathlete, and the
Yeah.
bike was an absolute joy. And all she's ever done is she's bought a chain wear indicator,
Mm.
and a lot of mechanics use this, the wear on your chain as an analog for the rest of the bike. So
Yeah.
she's bought a chain wear indicator. I think they're like £10
Yeah.
for a good quality Park Tool one. You just check to see whether or not the chain's stretched. And you can guarantee that when the chain's stretched, there'll be a few other things that have gone as well that need attention. Anyway, she's bought the chain's stretched, so she bought the bike in, said, I want a full service, please. And it's like, this bike doesn't need a full service. It just needs, she's looked after it so well. And all she's done is she's cleaned the bike, she's glued the chain, she sprays a bit of silicone onto the group set and onto the group set and onto
Yeah.
the frame just to provide a little bit of lubrication. She needed new brake pads, but the bike was in such great condition, I almost didn't want to touch it. So instead of spending like she wanted £169 full service,
Mm.
but I said, look, you only need a £69 service, the basic service we do, and
Yeah.
I'll put a new chain on, I'll check everything, and I'll give the bike a good old clean. It doesn't really need it. I'll give the bike a good old clean. I put a
Mm.
new chain, new pads, and you're good to go. And that's the kind of bike I like to work on. And and other times you get someone who's booked a basic service and they come in with an absolute bag of nails, and the chain's like almost hanging off the teeth, and you're like, "Are you?" I don't, it, it baffles me how, for example, I like to go overseas to races to Lanzarote, Mallorca, wherever it happens to
Yeah.
be, and you spend £400 on the flight tickets, you hire the bike box, you pack your bike up, you got the hotel room, blah 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 blah. You're
Yeah.
staring at the thick end of £1,000
Yeah.
for even
Easy.
the most basic non-branded Ironman
I mean,
race.
if you take your family out with you as well,
Yeah, exactly.
then
Yeah, and even if I'm driving, put the bike in the back of the car and go down to Marlow or somewhere to do
mm,
a local triathlon, which I quite like doing, that kind of thing. You're still looking, time you've had a bite to eat and driven down there, put some squirt in the petrol tank and everything, you're still looking at a couple £100
mm,
with the entry fees and what have you. Just getting your bike looked after properly. I mean, I've never had a failure on a triathlon other than one puncture. I had one puncture in the rain that didn't seal. It was tubeless. It
mm,
wouldn't seal.
yeah,
Um, but other than that, and this is before I was a bike mechanic. I don't have time to do some triathlons now. But in the good old days when I was doing quite a lot of triathlons,
yeah.
I had one puncture that didn't seal. And other than that, just I just looked after bikes. I just cleaned them properly.
Mm. Speaking of services, Can you explain? I mean, I know obviously you can only speak for your workshop, but I imagine that, your structure is probably it mirrors quite closely what other shops have. If you can talk through the general levels of service someone can expect, an approximate price point, and what people can expect for that level of service.
Sure, yeah. So most bike shops start with some kind of basic service for around about £50, 50 to £80. Actually, there's one opened up near us recently that's £99 for basic service, and they're just checking stuff. They're just checking, make sure the bearings are running smoothly, the chain's not too worn, all this kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and then if it needs a part, you put a part in. But they're just checks, and that's fine if you're looking after your bike. So you put your parts in. You know what happens to your front bearings are wobbly; they need new bearings, or gritty. You hear the word gritty quite often. That's where bearing's starting to wear. It's not running as smoothly. Only a really professional bike mechanic would notice the difference between a gritty bearing and a non-gritty bearing, because there are other things that can cause it to feel gritty when it's not. Anyway, I'm getting into the weeds there. So the next level of service is your sort of medium level of service, and this is where it starts to do your degreasing. So you take the drivetrain out, you degrease it, make sure it's all running true and nicely. Um, you might take you take the wheels off. You'll check the bearings for really detailed. You might drop the headset out and check that that's all cleaned and lubed, etc., etc., etc. And then you pop it all back together again, cleaning and lubing and replacing things as you go. And then the next level of service, I call it the premium level of service. This is where you take everything out, your bottom bracket, your headset, everything. You degrease it first of all, then you pop it in a ultrasonic cleaner. An ultrasonic cleaner is what you use for jewelry. It gets all the crap out from
Hmm.
between rollers, and then you lube everything as you put it all back in. Like on a premium service, I'll use 4 or 5 different kinds of lubricant as I'm reassembling. So, like, you'll have white waterproof grease goes on the inside of the bottom bracket. You'll have like a premium, very slippery, low viscosity grease that goes on the inside of the wheel bearings. You'll have silicone grease that goes on to, or lubricant that goes between plastic and metal,
Hmm.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that becomes quite a detailed thing. And in a premium service, it can take the thick end of the day. Quite often there'll be supplements. You've got an internally routed headset, bane of a cyclist's cycle mechanic's life.
Yep.
You're looking at doubling the cost. Usually, I charge, I think, £120 extra
Hmm.
for doing that, because you'll normally end up having to cut cables and redo them all, and there's always some pig of a bearing in there that doesn't get used anywhere else. And I had one in the other day. Every single bearing was unique from left to right, from top to bottom. And I ended up having to order 6 new bearings from
Can you
a
share
new
what brand
supplier.
the bike was?
Yeah, it was a bespoke. Oh God, I can't actually remember. It was a bespoke British brand.
Okay.
It's a lovely piece of machinery. It looks absolutely
Hmm.
beautiful. And I rode it afterwards. Oh, this is a lovely bike to ride.
Hmm.
But everything about it was bespoke to that bike. And it took me, I think it ended up taking me 3 days to service the bike. It was a gravel bike.
Yeah.
It was a lovely, lovely piece of machinery. I'd never seen one before. I've seen a couple since then,
Hmm.
because it's a small. I actually wrote to the manufacturer to make them a few suggestions about, because originally I'm an engineer, so rather than just fix things, I like to actually think of solutions. It's like, look, if you just made this hole a bit bigger, I wouldn't need to cut the cables, and if I
Hmm.
didn't need to cut the cables, it would save the customer a thick end of £100.
Yeah.
But just for making, and then they had a particular bearing on the bottom of the headset that was an odd size, and I couldn't get a stainless steel one for it, so I had to end up putting steel in it. Now, the bottom bearing on a headset, it gets exposed to all of the crap
Hmm.
coming at it from the weather, all the sweat dropping down when you're on a turbo,
Yep.
and all the jars as you go over road bumps. So you can only get an inexpensive, cheap steel bearing
Yeah.
to put in there. But if they'd made the bearing 1 millimeter smaller, they could have put a high quality stainless steel bearing in there,
Hmm.
and it would have saved a shed load of hassle.
Yeah.
So that was my suggestion to them.
Yeah. And what kind of, I mean, I guess sort of service frequency is going to depend on how well somebody sort of looks after the bike. What would you say is roughly speaking, a good routine, and or maybe sort of even the best time of year to send it in for a service? Would you go for a pre-winter service, a post-winter service, a pre-race service? What would your, as a mechanic, what would your general recommendations be there?
Lovely question. The most important thing is don't go in a week before the race, because
Hmm.
the races are in the summer, and the bike workshops I've worked at, you'll get 6 or 7 bikes per day coming in, and they tend to stack up. And you're looking at often at a 2 week turnaround time.
Hmm.
So the best time, in my view, to get your bike service is now in winter. I'm getting 1 or 2 bikes a day coming in.
Yeah.
So if a bike comes into me today, I will, if it doesn't need any exotic parts, I'll have it turned around. It will be gone out by tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah.
If it needs parts, then it might be a day extra. So I would, depending on where you are, how busy your local bike mechanics are, I would get it done during the winter. Um, March, it all starts to kick off. And so I would just get a big service done once a year, probably get that done in the
Mm.
winter. Um, to my customers, I offer what we call a top-up service. So if you've had one service, you're entitled to another service for £30 anytime during that year.
Hmm.
Okay. And that means that I can go over the bits and pieces I've done on a big service, just check everything's fine, give the bike a quick clean, hand it back to the customer.
Yeah.
And it takes me half an hour.
Yeah.
So I look for a bike shop that does something like that, so that you can get one service done, and then the week before the race, just walk in and say, look, you did the service back in February. Could you
Yeah.
just double check it, and they'll just check everything, and then you get the bike back straight away, knowing that you're going to get through the race with no problems.
Yeah.
And
So,
manually, I'll look for it.
little caveat there, um, is that once you get a bike service before a race, is to go out and to ride it before you pack it in the box. And then
Absolutely.
when you unpack it from the box, take it out for a 30-minute ride, go through all of the gears, go through everything. I had an athlete, she's one of only 2 athletes I've had who's failed to finish a race. The reason that she failed to finish the race is that she got her bike serviced in Italy when she went out there to a 70.3, and she ended up stuck in the big ring with her bike. And it's a hilly course, Italy, and she missed the cutoff because she had to push it up the hills and her legs were absolutely destroyed. However, if she knew, if she had, I mean, obviously it's not my job as a coach to teach bike maintenance. I encourage people to go out there and learn a bit, but if she had a sort of spent a bit more time fiddling around with the bike herself, she likely would have realized, oh, if I undo this Allen's key bolt here, the chain drops and it gets stuck in the small ring. And so just understanding the basic principles of bike maintenance like that can really save your skin.
Yeah, I think also to a point to bear in mind is that this will astonish you, Simon. Not all bike mechanics are perfect,
I know it's
and
hard to
and
believe, isn't it?
we make mistakes. And you might think, well, I've got Shimano Ultegra. Every mechanic must know that, but there are like 12 different kinds of Shimano Ultegra, and you might not have seen that particular model for a while.
Mm.
And particularly, we've got TT bikes. Sometimes the cable routing's weird, and
Yep.
it's done differently. There are certain manufacturers. You're like, what on earth made you think that was a good idea?
Yep.
So you make mistakes, and I would say 1 in 10 of my services, customers come back with a tweak, because after riding it for a few days, the gears aren't sitting correctly,
Mm,
or the brake isn't quite as not the feel they wanted. I set brakes up the way
mm,
I think they should feel, but someone who's been used to a bike set up a different way, then they'll come back and say, "Well, they're too stubborn for me, or they're not sudden enough, or
yeah.
my hands are small and I want the levers in a different position." All of that kind of stuff. So
Mm,
don't be afraid to go back to your mechanic. We do make mistakes.
yeah.
And again, we talked about KMC chains earlier. Now, what I can tell you is that if I've got a fairly new bike with SRAM or Shimano recent model stuff, and it's all like fairly box fresh, got Shimano rear set and Shimano stuff everywhere, I'll always stick a Shimano or SRAM chain on there. But when I think someone's maybe put a SRAM chainring on with a Shimano cassette or a different kind of cassette,
Yeah.
um, then I'll normally put AMC chains on because they tend to be better at cost
Yep.
compatibility. But that doesn't always ring true. Again, even with KMC, you've got like four different chains in each speed range.
Really.
Um, yeah, so sometimes you put something on there and it just doesn't mate well. For some reason, it doesn't key in properly.
Mm,
There's probably good reasons for it. I don't know,
mm,
but yeah, don't be afraid to pop back to your bike mechanic and say, "Look, this isn't the way I want it to be." The classic example is actually the front chain ring. The almost all rear derailleurs work the same way. They're either electronic or they're not.
mm,
If they're not electronic, they all almost always work the same way. But funny enough, yesterday I was working at a very high-end bike workshop near us, which Simon alluded to earlier, and this customer walked in there and they had a sort of fairly inexpensive bike with a decent quality, but not top of the range Shimano front derailleur on it, and they were just really struggling. She was a lady, she has fairly small hands, and she was really struggling with changing the front chainring up and down the gears. And she bought a bike from somewhere else, but it was fairly new, and she was really struggling. It was just really, you could feel it was stiff. I was okay, I've got normal sized hands, but she was really struggling. So we tried all the normal things, changing the cables, lubing everything, making adjustments, and whatever we did, she would go around the block and come back and say, "Still, it's better, but still not good enough."
mm.
Try something else, and in the end, we went up to our parts bin and we found an older Shimano front derailleur with a much longer throw. So it had a much
Mm-hmm.
longer. I can't
Pivot
remember. I think it was
arms.
a Tiagra, but the leverage was
Mm,
much higher. Um, and we stuck that on there, and then all of a sudden it was much easier to change. The leverage had changed, and
yeah.
I don't know why. What the difference between this particular Tiagra and when she had 105 on, I think it was, and theoretically there's
Mm,
hardly any difference.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
actually, it was a second hand. We put a second hand derailleur on there for her, and it was much better than the sort of brand new 105.
Mm,
So again, a good mechanic will know that every customer's different, and they won't puff and suck their teeth. They'll just set the bike the way you want it to be set.
yeah. We've talked about Shimano. We've talked about SRAM. Talk to me about Campagnolo, for those who are maybe newer to triathlon. What's their market share at the moment? Do you get many bikes in? How easy is it to get the parts? How expensive is it?
Okay, so before I go on to Campagnolo, one of the reasons Shimano are so popular is that if at the bike mechanic I need a Shimano part, the Shimano UK distributor ships them free of charge next day.
Wow.
Okay, so if I buy, for example, SRAM, I have to pay £10 to ship that, and it normally takes a day or two.
Mm,
Um, and that eats into profit margins quite a lot. So Shimano have just made themselves market dominant, and for good reason. mechanics margins aren't high. We don't make a great deal of money.
Mm.
And if you're having to ship three different parts and pay 10 quid a day, 10 quid a parts, then and you don't have to pay for the other parts, then you end up buying Shimano a lot.
Mm.
And then also because you're doing Shimano a lot, you get more familiar with what works and what doesn't work, how to fix this, how to adjust that. So
Yep.
it just they've ended up with uh, becoming the mechanic's favorite, really.
Mm.
Um, SRAM is one that people talk about a lot. And what I can tell you about SRAM is that when it goes wrong, it just stops working, particularly the electronics. So it just stops working. You can't fix it. Just chuck it in the bin. But I've recently started sending stuff back to SRAM. I've become a SRAM service provider, and the actual warranties, the support has been absolutely fantastic. It's been really, really good. Everything I sent back, they just replaced without question. So I'm actually warming now to SRAM, and I've started fitting SRAM stuff more and more. Except it costs me a little bit more, but it does look nice. It's nice to work on as well.
I think it's very
And
popular with triathletes because rather than everything be wired
hmm,
with Di2, because it's wireless, you can have the blips on the end of your
yes,
aero bars, you can have it on your
exactly.
base bar, you can have it, you can set up blips wherever you want them. I think it's very
Hmm.
popular with triathletes.
Exactly right. Exactly. And my bike I was talking about earlier, the Scott Foil.
Yeah.
I've got TT bars on it, and I take them off and all that kind of stuff. And I've got the original Ultegra on there, the bike came with, and I'm loath to change it because it just works really well.
Mm.
But if I was changing, I'd definitely put SRAM on there.
Yeah.
Campagnolo. Now, a lot of mechanics are really scared of it because it does work differently to everything else. The cables are different, the chains are different, the cassettes are different, the chain rings are different. So it ends up being expensive and you have to wait. The brake pads are all different. So I carry some brake pads, some cables, and one cassette for Campagnolo. So out of, I've probably got 550 different items in stock.
Hmm.
The value is probably around about £5,000.
Yep.
Of those, only five of them are Campagnolo parts.
Mm.
So that gives you an idea. I like working on it. It works well. It's nice. The Yeah, is it as easy to play around with as the other stuff? I couldn't say because you just don't see it often enough. So, every time you get a Campagnolo, it's a bit of a learning
Hmm.
curve. Um, but I'm certainly not afraid of it. You see quite a lot of bike shops have Campagnolo spoken here, little
Yep.
signs, little
Yep.
enamelled signs. And it sort of indicates that the mechanic in there is not afraid of Campagnolo. But,
Yeah.
from a logistic point of view, we do have to charge a premium for Campagnolo and you will be waiting. And there's every chance that the mechanic won't have seen your particular problem before. So you'll have to spend a lot of time fixing it. And then you might find you'll have to go back once or twice because he hasn't got it right first time round.
Hmm.
So I've probably worked on 15 equipped Campagnolo bikes in the last 12 months.
Yep.
Um, and they probably all had completely different group sets and different problems. And each time was a learning curve. And by the time I came back to one of the original group sets, the original problem, I'll have forgotten. I'll have to go back to YouTube to figure it out again. So, but the stuff feels lovely. It's lovely, really
Yeah.
nicely made.
So, with all that in mind, with regards that it's going to take longer to get a bike serviced if you have Campag, and there's going to be a bit of a premium attached to it. Is it the kind of thing that if somebody's looking at two very good bikes, one has Campag, one has Shimano, that is the kind of thing that would sort of influence that, should be considered as a factor if somebody's choosing between the two bikes?
Yeah, I mean, if I if I were so inclined and I went out and bought myself a nice Stavello or Pinarello road bike,
Mm.
and it was going to be my sort of weekend special, I would definitely have Campag on there because it looks fantastic. It feels fantastic.
Okay.
And it was like if I was on the N+1 journey, yeah, I'd definitely have a Campag. I think it's a great product. It really feels nice, but it comes at a cost.
Yeah.
Um, but if I have one bike to rule them all, then yeah, it'll have Shimano, probably 105 or Ultegra on it, because any mechanic can fix it. Any mechanic would have seen it 100 times.
Yeah.
And there's any number of YouTube channels on there telling you how to fix things, and you
Yeah.
can get stuff easily. It's just dead simple.
Yep. I speaking of, parts that are hard to get hold of at a bike shop that I worked at, I was on the sales team. I heard a story about somebody, I think he was a relatively serious age group triathlete. He left it until the last minute to get his bike sort of serviced, and I'm not sure what the part was, but the mechanics had to have a chat with him, and they said, "Look, I'm afraid that we can't get this part in." Apparently, so the legend goes, he looked the mechanic dead in the eye, said, "I'd rather my family was dead," and stormed out. Obviously, completely inappropriate reaction. He got banned from the shop for that. Um, but yeah, it does. There are certain things that are just outside of a mechanic's control. The more like you said, the more obscure the bike is. Again, with parts not being Shimano or it just being sort of very complicated, things like integrated headsets, all of this stuff that is very nice and gives that premium sort of look. You do have to just, keep that in consideration, especially when you think even if you're out on the race course, they have mechanics, professional bike mechanics driving around in vans with spares. If you've got a really left field bike, they might not be able to get you up and running again if they haven't got a new chain. But on the sort of the theme of, you know, self-sufficiency, as it were, what do you think the jobs that any triathlete should sort of be able to learn to do for themselves? I mean, if I were to say, I'm just going to sort of start off with a few. You can agree, you can disagree, and you can add some extras. I think that changing a flat is an absolute like non-negotiable. You can't afford to go out and ride your bike just hoping that you won't get a puncture, and if you do get a puncture, that you can sort of that somebody will come along who might be able to fix that. Um, you know, you don't have to be a pro at it, but you should at least have the equipment on you. So you've got the levers, you've got the new tube, you've got the pump or the CO2. Because nothing is worse than if you come across someone, oh, have you got a puncture? Oh yeah. Can you help me? Yeah. Have you got a tube? Well, I suppose. At least have the bits on you to get you up and running. I think that. I think being able to be able to break a chain and um sort of set up a quick link if you were out on a ride. I mean, I've never once had a chain break on me on a ride. Um, but I'm sure I'm probably only one dodgy gear shift on a steep hill away from that potentially being an issue. But being able to fix a chain on the fly, probably swap cassettes. So if you are taking on sort of a hillier event or a flatter event, be able to change the cassette on the bike for that. And sort of a basic understanding of sort of the indexing of gears. I mean, for my mind, those are jobs that I would hope that a triathlete would be able to do themselves without having to go somewhere else. But are there any that you disagree with that you'd add to that list?
Yeah, I probably would disagree with the cassette. If you change your cassette, then normally you have to change the chain as well. If you've got a bigger cassette, you need a bigger, longer chain. If you've
Right.
got a smaller cassette, then so I would, I mean, I certainly would myself, even before I was a mechanic, would have changed the cassette myself and had different chains and all this kind of stuff. But I think that's just from the just from the triathletes I know, and I know quite a lot.
Hmm.
I don't think many of them would change the cassettes themselves.
Okay.
But definitely, okay. So the things I would definitely say that you need to know: proper preventative maintenance. That's the cleaning, the
Yeah.
lubing of the chain, the checking the tyres to make sure there are no bits of flint and things like that in there.
Yep.
So they're the three non-negotiables. You have to be able to do those things. The next one, I think you're absolutely right. We need to be able to index the gears, and with electronic gears, it's dead simple. It's an app on your phone. You just need to hang the bike by the saddle somewhere or turn it upside down. You can index it. It's really easy to index. And if you don't know how to do it, look at the YouTube. If you don't like YouTube, go to a mechanic and pay him 10 minutes of his time to show you how to do it. Okay. If you've got mechanical gears, then it's usually just a twiddle of a knob. There's normally an adjuster either on the group set at the back or on the shifter at the front on the handlebars. Or sometimes, if you've got externally routed cables, it might be on the down tube. But almost always, it's on the back. And it's just a matter of turning it one way or the other way. In terms of repairing a chain, I've always carried a quick link with me, a correct size quick link, and they're not expensive. I think they're like £7. You get two from KMC. They're fantastic. And your multi-tool should have a little chain breaker on there, and you should know how to use it. It's not difficult. I haven't broken a chain myself ever, but I've seen several chains broken. I used to be in quite a large cycling club. I'm not in there anymore, but they had lots of very, very powerful cyclists doing lots of miles, and it's very quick. It's very easy to forget how stretched your chain is and they get broken. So being able to do that is a good thing. That said, I think it's like the lady triathlete I was talking about the other day earlier. Buy a chain measuring tool and measure your chain.
Yeah.
Because if you're chained within spec and well lubricated, it's not going to break.
How does the so the chain checking tool that I've got, there's the Part Tool one. There are two sides to it.
Yes.
One that I believe is from sort of 8 to 10 speed, and one side is sort of for 11 speed. Because the tolerances are that much lower on a.
No. So the way it works is you've got on the Part Tool one you're talking about.
Yep.
The one side is 0.5 of a millimeter stretch, and one side is 0.75 of a millimeter stretch.
Yeah.
Okay. So what you do is you pop it on the 0.5 side first.
Yep.
If the thing doesn't go through, then your chain's good. There's nothing wrong with your chain. Just keep looking after it the way you're looking after it. You've got to go. But if it drops through, then you've got 0.5 of a millimeter stretch. It's time to change your chain.
Yeah.
You don't need to put an expensive chain on. Just put a chain on.
Yeah.
Chains, as long as you buy a decent brand, etc. Chains shouldn't cost you more than £50. But most chains are around about £25. Decent KMC is about £25.
Yeah.
Okay. Pop a new chain on. If the 0.5 millimeter goes through and you turn it around and a 0.75 millimeter goes through as well, then your chain and cassette are worn and need to be replaced.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you change your chain and cassette at that point, then you should be okay with the chain ring. And the chain ring is the most expensive and the biggest hassle of the things to change. If you put your 0.75 millimeter through and it drops through nice and easily, and then you can flick it back and forth, then you're probably looking at a millimeter stretch. And that would normally indicate that your chain ring has also gone as well. Okay. Now, most mechanics will use that as an analog for the rest of the bike.
Yeah.
So if you've been careful and looked after your bike properly and you've noticed your chain is stretched to 0.5 of a millimeter, the chances are then the rest of the bike's looked after and we don't need to go into too much detail. You'll just need the chain changed and possibly a very basic service.
Okay.
Chain goes in there, quick check over, bike's out again. Simple. If your if you haven't noticed it and your chain has stretched to the point that the cassette needs replacing, then at that point we will be looking at the rest of the bike,
Mm.
um, and considering a more extensive service.
Yep.
So one other thing that you did ask, one other thing that you do need to be cognizant of is your brake pads. Know how to check your brake pads.
Yep.
So just to go back, clean your bike, muck off, clean it again. Check the chain wear, check the tyres, check your brake pads.
Yep.
Particularly with disc brakes, it's not as easy as it used to be, but there are a few techniques you can use to check your particular brand of brake pad. It is easier to just to check on YouTube,
YouTube. Yeah.
and you'll see. I need to sort of show you how to do it rather than
Mhm.
explain it.
Yeah.
But you want some meat on your pads before a race. Pads, they should last at least a year.
Yeah. Great. That's been really helpful. I just wanted to touch before you go. So, on a couple of more sort of seasonal topics. Again, might have you back to talk about a few more elements in a bit more detail, later in the season. But for now, it's January. People are doing a lot of that. There are, they're mixing between riding on the road in poor conditions with lots of salt and flint and all of that, with a high risk of punctures, and that or they're riding on the turbo. So, are there considerations that you think that people need to make for those? What preventative measures are mudguards going to help protect your drivetrain? Are they going to help prevent things from getting dragged in quite so much? Is it more a case of sort of looking after you? How much do people, are there any routine jobs that people need to do even when the bike is on the turbo or before they put it on the turbo? What are the best kind of January-esque tips for people being able to enjoy a well-functioning bike when the summer comes?
Okay, so the thing I suggest to people on turbos, that the only two things you're going to be really wearing out is your chain and your bottom bracket and your pedals. But the wear when you're inside your garage or your spare room or wherever you have, if you're doing your turbo, the wear is a fraction, absolute tiny fraction of what it would be out on the road.
Yep.
So yeah, definitely protect your headset and your bar tape. The sweat dropping down onto the bar tape, it eats into the aluminium or eats into the carbon fiber under your bar tape. And I've seen some horrible things. I've only just
Yeah. Yeah.
Rocky House of Horrors. And then you don't want your sweat going down inside your headset because that's going to cause nasty corrosion, and it's worse than road salt.
Yeah.
So a towel over your headset or one of those things to I can't remember what they're called now, the little things you attach to the bikes
Sweat
to
guard.
stop
I think I
sweat
thought,
guards. Yeah,
yeah, whatever they're called.
sweat guards. When you're riding on a road, I mean, I always ride with mud guards in the winter, mostly out of courtesy for the people I'm riding with. I always like riding with groups,
Hmm.
and I know dirty faces win races, but you don't really want to be covering your friends' faces in the filth off your back tyre. So I always stick at least a rear mud guard on.
Yep.
I don't think that does anything for your drivetrain. I think good,
Right.
just simple maintenance for the drivetrain. Um, One thing I do say with people is when you're on a turbo, don't use the gears that you normally use when you're on the road. So don't use your big ring, use your small ring.
Hmm.
Um, and because most people have got a smart turbo now, so it actually doesn't matter what chain combination you're in. So use a different chain combination to what you normally would use. So I tend to use a small ring at the front and a larger ring at the back, so that you've got less wear going on.
Yeah, I
Or
think that's
you're
that's
wearing,
true if somebody's riding with erg mode where the trainer
yeah,
takes over the
exactly, yeah.
resistance. If
Mm,
you are on a sort of a course that's simulating real life where it gets harder on the hills, then you
mm,
just have to sort of sit in the gear that will
mm,
sort of sit with your natural cadence, as it were.
yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I don't think. you know, the bike maintenance. One thing I always say about storing a bike as well is we talked about like there's 15 different bearings inside a bike, but there's also about five different springs as well.
Right.
And there's also quite a few cables, and they all wear if they're under
Yeah.
tension. So if you're leaving a bike for a period of time, even if it's just a few days, I always change it to the smallest cog at the back and the smallest cog at the front
Ah,
to
yeah.
remove the tensions from the gears, from the chain, and from the cables.
Yeah.
Contrary to popular belief, cables don't stretch.
Yes.
It's actually the outer bit that shrinks.
Oh, interesting. So it's the cable outer, that
Yeah,
black
yeah, the
plastic.
outer black or whatever colour. It's
Yeah.
that shrinks. And it's not the inner cables certainly wear, but they don't stretch.
Yeah. That makes sense. Right. So before we go, anything else that you wanted to add? Any words of wisdom?
Um, no, just remember those rules. Check your pads, check your back tire, particularly your back tire, front as well, but just check splint in your tires.
Yep.
Um, don't get baffled by um, people talking technical stuff. You know, if you just clean your bike, lube your chain, then most of the work is now done. You don't need to worry
Yeah.
about too much else.
Yeah.
Check your pads. Um, don't spend thousands of pounds on meaningless ceramic upgrades. Spend money on a decent coach.
I didn't want to
That'll get
say it.
you.
I did think it.
Yeah, you're not going to win races by changing well, not even win races. You're not even going to keep up with your mates by changing to
Yeah.
ceramic bearings, but you will keep up with your mates better if you've got a good coach, and you will
Mm.
keep up with your mates much better if you're able to ride downhill with confidence and
Yeah.
corner with confidence, because you've got decent tires and you've been coached well.
Yeah. And don't buy, very cheap components online
Yeah,
because
and
they're probably
don't
going to be
buy
Mickey
expensive
Mouse.
exotic component. Well, you can do. I mean, people, but I might say a lot of my time is spent fitting very expensive exotic components to bikes people have bought on the
Mm.
internet 'cause they've seen a review. This is going to change my life. Can you fit it for me? And you're like, oh, I can fit it for you, but it's not going to change your life. It make you feel better, and that's great. I mean, that's half the battle. Um, and I work in some very, very high end workshops, bike shops where people are constantly being relieved of their excess money
Mm.
um, by because they walk past, they see something shiny. We're like magpies, aren't we? You see
Mm.
something shiny, you've got to have it, and there's nothing wrong with it. That's fine. That's what keeps the economy going. But yeah, focus on the basics on
Yeah.
on your bike yourself. That's the thing that will make you finish the race where you want to finish the race.
Excellent. So whereabouts are you based and how can people find you?
So I'm in Southwest London, I'm in Southfields. So just Google cyclecentral.co.uk. I think we're lucky that we're the only five-star reviewed Google business in the area that I know of. All of our reviews have been five-star, and I haven't bribed anyone.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I mean I'll do with most stuff, you know, but I have to say I don't deal with e-bikes.
Mm.
Um, and I'm not that keen on old Dutch bikes as well. But my bread and butter really is nice, shiny, decent weekend bikes that people, um, want to win their races on. That's
Yeah.
my kind of thing. Although, having said that, all of that, if you've got a nice, shiny weekend bike, you've almost certainly got a commuter as well, and I'm happy to do those too.
Good stuff. Well, thank you very much for your time, Lee. I really appreciate it. I hope that people have learned a lot. I'll stick a link to your website down in the show notes. So if there's anyone in the Southwest London area who's looking for a little bit of help with their bike, hopefully they'll look you up.
Right, and we're offering a free concierge service, so you pick the bike up and drop it off at the moment.
Good
It's only
stuff.
for winter. Normally
Nice.
we charge.
Excellent.
Okay.
Well, thank you again for your time.
Cheers. Cheers, Simon. Bye bye.
Take care now. Thanks again to Lee for that. I think we can all agree it's very helpful. I think it's pretty clear that I learned a thing or two there as well. So just a reminder that you can find details about Lee's business down in the show notes, as well as where to download your free thank you ebook. With all that said, thank you once again for listening, and I'll see you again next week.